Nyx clung to Twilight's front leg as the pair looked at the building ahead of them. It was painted in rich, welcoming reds and surrounded by a lush green yard. The building was decorated with festive hearts. Even the weather vane on top of the building featured a heart, looking almost like Cupid's arrow. The playground was visible behind the building, while in front there was a flagpole with a hedge sculpture of a pony wearing a square, flat-topped hat with a tassel. It was a welcoming sight to most young ponies in the community and a place of fond memories for many of Ponyville's residents. It was a place of learning, where ponies studied for a bright future and made good friends. It was the Ponyville Elementary School, where the Mulberry Earth pony, Cheerilee, granted the gift of knowledge to her students. It was a place that utterly terrified Nyx.
Do I really have to go?
Nyx asked, trying her best to hide behind Twilight's legs.
Yes,
Twilight replied.
For how long?
Nyx whined.
You're signed up for morning class, so you'll be done around lunchtime. I'll come back to pick you up then. But I didn't have to go to school before. Why do I have to now? It's important for you to get a good education,
Twilight replied, though it wasn't the whole truth. Yes, she felt it was important for Nyx to go to school, but it was also part of her disguise. If she was going to school, it would be easier for ponies to believe that she was just an average unicorn filly and Twilight's cousin. Nyx was also becoming just a little too clingy at the library. She had a thirst for knowledge that was almost unquenchable, and Twilight hadn't been able to research the cult spell. She found Nyx's curiosity wonderful and wanted to encourage it, but she needed to be able to work on her own studies as well, and maybe a few hours to herself.
Can't I just stay with you at the library?
Nyx pleaded.
The whole point of school is to learn new things,
Twilight replied.
You've been learning everything you can with me and Rarity, and you've been having a lot of fun. Now you're going to learn something from Cheerilee, with other fillies and colts instead. But I know you and your friends, and I don't know Cheerilee. What if she's mean?
Twilight chuckled a little at Nyx's fear.
Don't worry, Cheerilee's very nice. Just pay attention in class and remember to follow the rules. That means both Cheerilee's rules and my rules, which are: I can't take off my vest, or my glasses, and I can't tell any pony about my wings or that I'm an alicorn, and I should try not to use my magic unless I'm writing something down. And try to make friends,
Twilight added, rubbing a hoof against Nyx's head. With a yelp and a giggle, Nyx batted at Twilight's hoof before she escaped from the playful Noogie. She looked back up at Twilight, curiosity glinting in her eyes.
Are friends really that important? Trust me, nothing's more important than having good friends,
Twilight said, taking a step towards the school bell as it began to ring.
Now, come on. If we keep standing here, you're going to be late. Good morning, class,
Cheerilee greeted in a sing-song voice as she stood at the front of the room.
Good morning, Cheerilee,
the class echoed back, some honestly, others just to please the teacher.
Now, before we get started, I have a small announcement to make. We have a new student joining us today. Her name is Nyx,
Cheerilee said, motioning to the filly standing next to her.
And I expect all of you to welcome her as you would any new student. Yes, Cheerilee,
the class chimed back. Cheerilee gave a pleased nod before turning to look at Nyx.
Good. Now, go find a seat. You can take any open desk you like.
Nyx nodded gently as she looked out across the 16 desks. The class was sitting to one side of the room, leaving an empty column of desks, which had been added the previous evening, to the left side. Nyx looked at each seat, trying to decide which of the open desks to claim as her own. Twilight had told her to sit as close to the front as possible. However, Nyx didn't feel brave enough to sit at the very front, at least not on the first day. Nyx eventually picked the desk second from the front, setting down her saddlebags before taking her seat. Directly to her right was an earth pony with a grayish magenta coat and a mane that was a mixture of white and violet. Nyx couldn't help but notice she was wearing a tiara very similar to one she had for a cutie mark. It was only then that Nyx realized the pony she was staring at was staring back, and not in a good way. The tiara-wearing pony wore an expression of annoyance, as if Nyx's very presence offended her. Nyx shrank away from the other filly, not sure what to do, but she remembered that Twilight had told her to make friends. Gathering up what courage she could, Nyx gave a sheepish smile and gently waved her hoof. But the tiara-wearing pony just humphed and turned her head away, lifting her nose a little. Nyx slumped in her seat at the dismal and rested her head at the desk. She glanced at the other fillies and colts in class, but those who happened to be looking her way quickly turned their heads back to the front when she glanced in their direction. Frowning and turning her head towards the front, Nyx watched cheerily write on the chalkboard as her mind came to a single solid and, in her opinion, undeniable conclusion. School was not going to be fun. School was amazing. Nyx could only smile, horn shimmering as she took notes feverishly. Shirley had started the day's lesson with some history, teaching about ponies' origins and traditions such as winter wrap-up and the running of the leaves. "Now, are there any questions before we go to recess?" Shirley asked, not expecting to see a hoof in the air. Her students were always more interested in taking their recesses than they were in learning more. So Shirley couldn't help but smile when she saw a particular black hoof in the air, one that had been raised several times over the course of the morning. "Yes, Nyx, what is your question?" "How was winter wrap-up done before the Pegasus ponies in Ponyville?" "That's a very good question, Nyx," the teacher replied, pleased with her students' inquisitiveness. "While it's a tradition that magic isn't used to clean up weather, few ponies realize that back when the tradition started, there weren't any Pegasus around." "So how did they clean up the clouds and get the birds back?" "Well, if you don't mind getting to recess a little later than usual, I can tell you that originally the Earth ponies in town," and Shirley was off, going a little deeper into her lecture than she had intended. Nyx was happy and already jotting down fresh notes. Her note-taking, however, was interrupted when something hit the side of her head. Looking down at the floor, she saw a piece of paper, and upon looking up, she saw a number of her classmates were glaring at her coldly. Under the unforgiving glares of her classmates, Nyx could only sink into her desk and whimper a little. She didn't know what she had done wrong. She just had to question. She was just curious. "Boy, am I glad to be outside," Applebloom said 15 minutes later, when Shirley had finished talking about how her Earth ponies cleared the clouds. "I was worried we wouldn't get to recess because of the new filly question." "Yeah, but it's pretty cool hearing about how Earth ponies were able to clear the skies and bring back the southern birds before there were Pegasi in town," Twist agreed as she and Applebloom walked down the outside steps of the schoolhouse, heading towards the playground area. "Yeah, it was kinda cool, but I'd still rather have recess. What do you want to do?" Twist pointed her hoof to the school's small sports field, where several other classmates were kicking a ball around. "We could go play hoofball with Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle." Applebloom scrunched her nose up for a moment, then shook her head. "Nah, we played that all last week." "You want to take turns on the swings then?" Twist asked, pointing at the swings in question. "Now that sounds like a good idea," Applebloom replied as the pair began to trot towards the playground equipment. Twist had arrived first and jumped onto the wooden swing set. Applebloom stood back to wait her turn. She watched Twist swing higher and higher, her own smile growing as Twist reached impressive heights. It wasn't the highest Applebloom had seen any pony reach on the swing, but it was still respectable. "Hey!" Twist called, before she reached the top of her forward swing. "What is it?" Applebloom shouted back. "I think Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara are talking to the new filly," Twist explained, saying a few bits of her sentences at a time as she swung by Applebloom. Turning her head, Applebloom looked in the direction the swing was facing and saw that the two school bullies had caught the new filly just as she was coming outside for recess. The three of them were talking on the steps outside. By the looks of things, it wasn't a pleasant conversation. "What do you think they're talking about?" "Nothing good if I know those two," Applebloom said before she took a step in that direction. "Twist, you stay here. I'll be right back." "Okay," Twist called out as she continued to swing, but she kept watching her friend as she crossed the playground and drew closer to Diamond Tiara, Silver Spoon. "So, we don't appreciate nerds like you making us miss recess. The class is already so boring without you asking a bunch of questions. We get enough of that from Twist, don't we, Diamond Tiara?" "Yes, we do, Silver Spoon.
But at least Twist is bearable. She also doesn't have an ugly coat like yours.
Nyx cringed and lowered her head as her ears flattened against her skull. She had been the last to get out to schoolhouse for recess, mostly because she had stopped to ask cheerily what recess was. Cheerily had been more than happy to answer, though Nyx hadn't been thrilled by the idea of having to go and play with the classmates she had just made angry. Her fears had only been confirmed when the filly she sat next to in class, and another filly, one with a gray coat and a spoon cutie mark, caught her within a few seconds of her stepping outside.
Ugly?
Was all she was able to stammer out under the other filly's verbal assault.
Yeah, ugly,
Diamond Tiara sneered.
It's the absolute worst color. I would just die if I had a black coat.
Silver Spoon nodded her head in agreement, scrunching up her nose in disgust.
Me too. Not only is black, so ugly, but it's creepy too. Only things like spiders, bats, and ticks are supposed to be black. She probably actually likes bugs,
Diamond Tiara added.
Why, I bet she's covered in ticks at this very moment. Ew,
Silver Spoon said while sticking her tongue out. She and Diamond Tiara began to smile devilishly as they chanted in unison.
Nyx has ticks, Nyx has ticks, Nyx has ticks. I do not.
Nyx whimpered in an attempt to defend herself. But Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon's onslaught of chanting continued. Tears started to flow from her eyes, and the sight of her crying only fueled the sadistic mood of the two class bullies.
Ah, look, she's crying,
Diamond Tiara mocked with fake sympathy.
I didn't realize that little fools come to school. Or maybe it's your lame special talent. Crying? What special talent? She doesn't even have a cutie mark,
Silver Spoon noted, pointing to Nyx's blank flanks.
Wow, I so didn't even notice that before,
laughed Diamond Tiara before looking back at Nyx.
So not only are you a nerd, a creep, and a crybaby, but you're also a blank flank. You're like the biggest loser in the whole school. More like the biggest loser in Ponyville,
Silver Spoon corrected, which only made Nyx cry harder. However, before the two fillies could continue to taunt, tease, and torment Nyx, Diamond Tiara was shoved to the side. A sudden push sent her off balance, and both she and her namesake Tiara fell off into the dirt.
Oh my gosh, Tiara!
Silver Spoon exclaimed as she looked to where Diamond Tiara had been standing moments ago. A furious-looking Apple Bloom was standing there now in Diamond's place. She was glaring down at the two schoolyard bullies.
You're gonna be in so much trouble now, Apple Bloom. Cheerily says no fighting in school.
Silver Spoon snapped at Apple Bloom as she helped Diamond Tiara up off the ground.
I'm going to tell Cheerily. Fine, go ahead,
Apple Bloom snapped back. She didn't falter, even a moment, at the mention of the teacher's name.
If you do that, then I'll tell her that you are all being mean. And you think she'll believe you?
Diamond Tiara asked once she had gotten back to her hooves. Apple Bloom nodded her head firmly.
Nyx is crying, and Twist is watching the whole thing from over there on the swing. Is not,
Diamond Tiara protested. Apple Bloom, however, just smirked and pointed a hoof behind her, where Twist, while still on the swings, was in fact watching what was going on. Silver Spoon grabbed Diamond Tiara's tiara and did her best to wipe the dirt off the treasured crown before giving it back to Diamond.
Come on, this, is not worth our time getting in trouble for. Fine, you win this round, blank flank. Have fun with your friend and all of her ticks,
Diamond Tiara sneered before turning away.
Let's get out of here, Silver Spoon.
Silver Spoon stuck her tongue out at Apple Bloom as a final parting snot before she and Diamond Tiara retreated. Apple Bloom watched the pair leave, and only after she was sure they were out of earshot did she huff and scrape the ground with her hoof.
Someday I'd like to buck some sense into those two, just like my big sister would. She would have gotten in trouble in school. But you can't bet your mane she never got teased by the likes of them.
Apple Bloom finally lowered her guard. She blew a tuft of her mane out of her face and turned to look at Nyx.
You okay?
Nyx, who had watched the exchange between Apple Bloom, Diamond Tiara, and Silver Spoon, nodded her head as she pulled herself up. She closed her eyes, carefully removing her glasses, and used a hoof to rub away the tears on her cheeks. She did not open her eyes again until her glasses were back on where they belonged, perched squarely on her nose.
Why are these two so mean?
Sniffled Nyx.
Personally, I think it's their special talents. And that should have had Billy Cootie marks. But I guess it's kind of like having a special talent for arguing. There just isn't a cutie mark that really makes sense for being a bully. I'm Applebloom, by the way,
the yellow filly said before she stuck out a hoof. Nyx looked at the hoof for a bit, cautious of the kindness she was being shown after Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon's cruelty. Still, she eventually managed a weak smile as she reached out and gently shook it.
I'm Nyx.
Howdy, Twilight. What brings you around these parts here? Applebloom greeted as she caught up to Twilight Sparkle, who was walking down an earthen path in Ponyville.
Oh, hey Applejack. I'm just on my way to the schoolhouse,
Twilight replied.
Well, that's just where I'm heading,
Applejack said as she began to walk with Twilight.
I'm picking up Applebloom from school today. Need her to help running some errands in town. What about yourself?
I'm picking up Nyx. Nyx? That cousin of yours? Applejack asked, surprised.
Since when did that little filly start going to school? Today was her first day, actually.
Applejack whistled before glancing in Twilight's direction. First day of school's never easy, especially if you just moved to a new place.
Yeah. I remember the first day I transferred to my old school, to Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns,
Twilight reminisced.
It was scary, but I still didn't have to deal with a lot of other students, being Celestia's private pupil and all. Still, doesn't this mean Applebloom and Nyx will be in class together?
Yep, right along with Sweetabelle and Scootaloo. You think they've met? Applejack asked. Twilight opened her mouth to reply, but at the moment the school came into view. Just outside the schoolhouse's front door, Twilight saw a pair of fillies running and laughing merrily. It was a sight that made Twilight smile.
I'd say they're more than just met.
Applejack! Applebloom called out when she caught sight of her older sister. Soon, she and Nyx had scampered over to meet Twilight and Applejack, who were smiling down at the pair of young ponies.
Hey, Applebloom, how was school today?
Applejack asked.
It was really fun, and I've made a new friend,
Applebloom said with a smile before motioning to Nyx with her hoof.
Applejack, this is Nyx. Nyx, this is my big sister Applejack.
Applebloom put on a big smile and looked back at Nyx. She expected to see a similar expression, but instead found a lot of confusion.
Wait, your big sister is Applejack? You already know my big sister?
Applebloom asked in return, reflecting Nyx's confusion. She should, Applejack interrupted.
Twilight brought Nyx around the orchard yesterday. Why would she do that?
Applebloom asked, cocking her head to one side.
Because Nyx is my cousin, and she's staying with me at the library while she's here in Ponyville,
Twilight answered with a simple lie.
Whoa, that's cool,
Applebloom said excitedly.
Did you know Twilight won beats an Ursa Major all by herself?
Nyx's eyes went wide, and she looked at Twilight with her mouth agape.
You did?
Well, yes, but I wouldn't really call what I did beating it, Twilight clarified modestly. The Ursa Minor was just cranky after being woken up.
I just gave it some milk and rocked it to sleep.
But it was really cool, Applebloom assured Nyx.
So, did anything else happen at school today?
Twilight asked, trying to steer the conversation away from her victory over the Ursa Minor.
Well, some of the other fillies in class were mean to me, and Shirley wanted me to give you something,
Nyx said. With her horn glowing, she clicked open a latch on her saddlebags and pulled out a note. Twilight quickly took the note in her own magic and lifted it to her face so she could read it.
What does it say? Did Nyx do something bad?
Applebloom asked, her only experience with teachers' notes being referrals for bad behavior.
No, it's just Shirley asked me to make sure Nyx knows about some subjects, since she started partway through the school year.
Applejack leaned to one side and whistled while she read the note over Twilight's shoulder. That ain't just some subjects, Twi. That's a lot of book learning Nyx has to catch up on.
Yes, but with my help, she'll be sure to get through all that quickly,
Twilight said confidently as she rolled up the note and put it back into Nyx's saddlebags.
Well, of course we'll start right away. We could probably get through basic mathematics this afternoon, if we hit it really hard.
Ah, Applejack muttered in disappointment. What's the matter, Sugar Cube?
I wanted to ask Nix if she wanted to join the Cutie Mark Crusaders. I'm meeting Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle this afternoon so we can try and find her cutie marks. Nix doesn't have hers either, so I thought she might like to come along.
Well, how about you let Nix go get some learning done with Twilight, and then you and your friends can go see her at the library later? Applejack suggested before she glanced over at Twilight. That is, of course, if it's okay with you, Twi. Twilight opened her mouth to answer, but before she could, she saw Applebloom and Nix looking up at her. A pair of them were putting on the biggest, most pleading puppy dog eyes and smiles they could muster, and Twilight couldn't help but giggle. She nodded, causing the pair to cheer. Diamond Tiara groaned as she dropped her face into her open book. She glared coldly at the letters on the page, even though she'd rather be focusing her glare on their new classmate. Nix had just asked another question, right before recess, and now Shirley was continuing to lecture past class time. Thankfully, the answer to Nix's question was short, and the fillies and colts of the school were soon free to run and play outside. Nix rushed out with Applebloom and Twist, and the three ran to meet Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo near some of the school's playground equipment. Diamond Tiara, on the other hoof, lingered near the schoolhouse and watched Nix as she waited for Silver Spoon to go outside.
Hey there, Diamond Tiara. How boring was that lesson? Totally boring. And Nix just couldn't keep her mouth shut and had to ask another dumb question. Like, I don't know what's wrong with her. It looks like he actually likes school. A total egghead,
Silver Spoon agreed.
She's been like this since she started class 2 weeks ago. I don't know why she keeps doing it. Like, every pony else has to hate her as much as we do. Her only friends are those three blank flanks and the other nerd, Twist. Someone needs to teach her a lesson about being so nerdy.
Silver Spoon then smiled, and an idea piped into her head.
Hey, you want to put gum on her chair? No, that won't do. It would make her cry, but not much else. No, if we want to prank her, it needs to be a prank that teaches her not to be so curious,
Diamond Tiara said. She shifted her gaze away from Nix, searching for some inspiration for the perfect prank. She looked at her classmates playing and the playground equipment, then her gaze shifted to the forest in the distance. Diamond began to smile devilishly.
Oh, that is too perfect. What is?
Silver Spoon asked. Diamond Tiara motioned for Silver Spoon to get close before she started whispering into her friend's ear. Still, as Diamond Tiara explained the idea, Silver Spoon's smile weakened.
I don't know, Diamond. It's a good idea, but what if something happens to her? We could get in trouble. It's a great idea, Diamond corrected. And it will teach Nix a lesson. Besides, she'll be there for like 10 minutes before she turns around and runs like a crying baby.
Silver Spoon bit her lip for a moment, but then smiled and nodded.
Okay, let's do it. Bump, bump, sugar lump, rump,
the pair said in unison, doing their strange, special hoof shake before they laughed and strolled off to plan their plan. Coming! Twilight set the book down that she had been holding and trotted towards the library door. She'd been organizing a few books while Nix worked on some math problems as part of Twilight's efforts to catch her up on the rest of her class. Nix was currently sticking her tongue out and scratching her head as she tried to solve one particularly difficult problem.
Nix,
Twilight called from the door. Nix looked up from the math worksheet Twilight had made for her and called back.
Yeah? There's a couple of your friends here from school. Do you want to take a break and go play with them?
Nix was at the door in a flash, expecting Applebloom, Scootaloo, and Sweetie Belle or Twist. But her smile quickly withered when she saw Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon standing in the library doorstep.
Hey, Nix. We were just going to Sugar Cube Corner for a snack. You want to come with us?
Diamond Tiara offered with a big friendly smile.
I really shouldn't,
Nix said.
I've got a lot of studying to do. Oh, nonsense,
Twilight said, using a leg to push Nix out the door. She fetched Nix's saddlebags and put a few bits into the right pouch.
Go have a break with your friends. Oh, and can you bring me back a sugar cookie too? Pinkie Pie was bragging about the sugar cookies she made this morning were the best ever, and I was hoping to try one. But,
Nix stammered, but before she could say anything else, she was outside and the door of the library had been shut behind her. Nix lowered her head and looked at the two other fillies, afraid of what they would say to her. Rather than insult her, Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon just continued to smile.
First, I just want to say that Silver Spoon and I are sorry for being so mean.
Nix raised her head and made no effort to hide the expression of confusion and surprise that formed on her face.
You do?
Diamond Tiara nodded and motioned with the hoof. The trio began to walk down the street in the direction of Sugar Cube Corner, while they continued to talk.
Yeah, like, we thought about what we did and we're sorry we did it. It's not easy being the new kid in town, and it was wrong of us to be mean to you like that. Oh, that's okay. I forgive you,
Nix said with a weak smile as she walked between Diamond and Silver Spoon.
You two did a lot of mean things, though. We know, and we feel really bad about it. But, like, we gotta make sure new ponies in town are cool,
Silver Spoon said, as if judging a pony's coolness was their job.
So it was all a test?
Yes, Diamond Tiara assured.
And you passed. Congratulations. But how is saying I have tics a test?
Nix asked, focusing her questioning gaze on Diamond Tiara. There was a moment of pause for Diamond. She smiled weakly as she glanced anxiously at Silver Spoon.
Silver Spoon interrupted. We wanted to make sure you actually cared about being covered in ticks. That way we would know whether you cared about being clean. Well, of course. What kind of pony would actually like to be covered in ticks?
Nix asked.
A pony that's, like, a real weirdo,
Diamond Tiara answered, jumping back to the conversation after Silver Spoon's rescue.
And you're obviously not a weirdo, because you do care. Still, we are, like, sorry that we made you cry. And just had to be sure you're a cool pony. And am I a cool pony?
Nix asked anxiously.
Silver Spoon nodded. Totally cool, and that's why we wanted to be, like, friends with you. Really?
Nix asked with a grin. Twilight often spoke of the importance of friendship over the past few weeks Nix had started school, and Nix was excited at the prospect of extending her circle of friends.
Oh yeah, we can, like, be total BFFs,
Silver Spoon assured eagerly.
What's that?
Nix asked as she continued to walk with the other two fillies.
BFFs, best friends forever,
Diamond Tiara explained.
Oh, and just so you know, black is totally a cool color.
Nix's eyes lit up, and her smile widened.
It is? Like the coolest color ever. It makes you unique, even if you don't have a cutie mark yet,
Silver Spoon assured.
Really cool,
Diamond Tiara agreed.
Well, thanks. I'm glad we can be friends,
Nix said with a wide smile. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon smiled as well, but they also winked at each other behind Nix's back and began to snicker.
What's so funny? Oh, nothing. I'm just thinking of a joke Silver Spoon told me,
Diamond Tiara assured Nix.
Now, let's get those sweets. Really?
Nix asked in disbelief as she sat with Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara just outside Sugar Cube Corner. Nix levitated the food to her mouth, doing her best to remember all the lessons about being a proper mare Rarity had taught her as she ate her snack. Since Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon seemed to be the kind of fillies that would care about that sort of thing.
Oh yes, the Every Forest is really amazing once you get deep inside enough,
Diamond Tiara assured Nix. She and Silver Spoon had spent the last half hour convincing Nix that once you got past the scary trees on the forest's edge, it became a beautiful place filled with all sorts of gentle animals, babbling brooks, and huge fields of flowers. To Nix, it sounded like the best place ever.
But I've been in the Every Forest with Twilight. I never saw anything like that. You must not have been deep enough,
Silver Spoon answered quickly, brushing off Nix's comment.
Still, you don't know what you're missing. It's like, so beautiful,
Diamond Tiara said before perking up with a smile.
Hey, We should all go together. I don't know,
Nick said nervously.
I've been in there and it's really scary. And Twilight told me never to go back there because of all the monsters. Look, there's nothing to be afraid of,
Silver Spoon insisted.
the path is like enchanted or something. You stay on it and the monsters will leave you alone. Oh, well, that's good. But
Nyx hesitated, rubbing her forelegs together and glancing over her shoulder.
Twilight's expecting me back at the library. Oh, don't worry. Silver Spoon and I will go tell her where you're going.
Diamond reached into her saddlebags, pulling out a map, and rolled it flat on the table. A red dotted line had been drawn on the map, leading deep into the forest.
Just follow this, and you'll get back into the really beautiful part of the woods. We'll be right behind you.
Nyx eyed the pair for a second, and then looked down at the map, biting her lower lip. Still, when she looked up and saw the very gentle and excited looks of Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, she couldn't help but smile. Nyx picked up the map with her magic and stuck it into her saddlebags. She took out some bits Twilight had given her.
Okay. Well, I'll see you there. But could you take a sugar cookie to Twilight when you tell her where we're going? Of course,
Silver Spoon said, taking the bits and standing up from the table.
I'll go buy the cookie right now. Yeah, we'll go to Twilight. You just go off ahead, BFF.
Nyx nodded, jumping down from the table and trotting off in the direction of the forest. Diamond Tiara smiled, watching Nyx as she had rounded the corner, and then burst out in laughter. Diamond Tiara laughed until Silver Spoon came back out of Sugar Cube Corner, carrying 2 freshly purchased cookies.
Oh, that was just too easy.
Silver Spoon nodded, offering one of the cookies to Diamond Tiara.
Yeah, and we got free cookies out of the deal. This, Silver Spoon, was our best prank ever. Totally,
Silver Spoon replied before the pair high-hoofed and began enjoying their ill-gotten sweets. Twilight trotted through the streets of Ponyville as she anxiously looked around. She hadn't seen Nyx in 2 hours and was starting to worry. She hadn't been able to find her or the 2 fillies she'd come to play with. For a moment, she was willing to believe they had just gotten caught up in playing and lost track of time. Trotting into the market, Twilight looked around as she saw no sign of Nyx. She did, however, catch sign of Applejack. Applejack was tending her market stand, while keeping an eye on Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, and Sweetie Belle, who were trying to balance on top of each other a few feet away. Twilight could only guess the trio were making another attempt to get their cutie marks, but she didn't have time to try and figure out what they were doing.
Hey, Applejack?
Hey there, Sugar Cube, Applejack greeted as Twilight trotted up to her market cart. What can I do you for? Want some Red Delicious, Gala, or maybe some Granny Smith apples?
Applejack, you haven't seen Nyx, have you?
Applejack cocked her head to the side.
Nyx?
No, I haven't. Is she missing?
I don't know,
Twilight fretted as she glanced about. 2 fillies from her class came by to see if she could play. That was an hour ago, and I'm starting to worry. Applejack chuckled, her eyes drifting over to Apple Bloom for a moment. Oh, Twilight, I'm sure you got nothing to worry yourself about. You know fillies that age, they're probably just off playing.
I know, but it has been 2 hours. What 2 fillies came to play with Nyx?
Apple Bloom asked. She and her friends walked up to the mares, having overheard the conversation.
I don't know their names.
One was gray with a spoon cutie mark and a braid in her mane. The other had a tiara.
Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon? Nyx went with them?
Apple Bloom exclaimed, her voice carrying over undertones of concern.
Yes. Is that bad?
Twilight asked, her concerns increasing from the filly's tone.
Twilight, those 2 are bullies. Don't you remember how they made fun of me and called me blank flank at Diamond Tiara's cute quinceañera?
Her eyes grew wide, memory that day causing her to stagger. She did remember those 2 fillies. They'd been teasing Apple Bloom about not having a cutie mark. She hadn't recognized them without their party dresses on, and she hadn't spoken or really seen that much of them in the years recently. Girls, Applejack began, getting the attention of the 3 fillies. I reckon you three better help Twilight find those two. Do you know where they like to hang out?
I know where Silver Spoon lives, Sweetabelle claimed. Rarity does a lot of business with her father, and sometimes when I go with her, I see Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon doing their homework at Silver Spoon's house.
Applejack nodded and began to lock up her apple cart. All right then. Sweetabelle, you show Twilight where Silver Spoon lives. See if they're there. Bloom, Scootaloo, y'all come with me and we'll go to see if they're over at Filthy Rich's store. Twilight and the three fillies nodded their heads, and soon the quintet of ponies had raced off in hopes of finding Nyx safe and sound. Nyx shakily took out the map Diamond Tiara had given her, checked it over before looking up at the dark, foreboding path ahead. She didn't know how far along the path she was, but the line on the paper said she was to keep going. The line crossed a river, and Nyx had heard the babbling of a stream just ahead of her. Still, after she rounded a corner, Nyx let out a small panicked yelp before she ducked behind a tree. Just in front of her, a giant purple sea serpent was splashing around in the water. The purple serpent's body was oddly styled hair, in the process of eating some rough gemstones he had gathered from the riverbed. Nyx wasn't certain the serpent wouldn't turn his gemstones and eat a little pony, so she decided to stay hidden and wait while he left. Twilight and Sweetabelle weren't able to find anyone at Silver Spoon's house. Applejack, Applebloom, and Scootaloo were just as unsuccessful. Diamond Tiara, Silver Spoon, and Nyx were simply nowhere to be found, and Twilight was officially starting to panic. The search quickly expanded. Applejack and Applebloom asked ponies around the market if they'd seen the trio of fillies. Sweetabelle ran to get Rarity, while Scootaloo used her scooter to race quickly out to Ponyville, to where Rainbow Dash was practicing tricks. That left Twilight to continue to run around Ponyville, trying to find Nyx and the two fillies she had last seen them with. She asked any pony she came across, growing more frantic as more time passed. Where were they? Where was Nyx? Twilight! Looking skyward, Twilight saw Rainbow Dash circling around her. I found them. This way. I'm right behind you, Twilight shouted to Rainbow Dash before calling on her magic. With a flash and a pop, she used her teleportation spell to move to a nearby rooftop. She kept teleporting between rooftops, following Rainbow Dash until they arrived at the edge of a park. Where are they? Rainbow Dash pointed with her hoof to a park bench, on which Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon were chatting and making fun of ponies walking by. Twilight was a little disheartened because she didn't look like Nyx was with them, but she kept herself focused on the task at hoof. Rainbow, find the others and have them meet in the town square, just in case we have to find Nyx, while I see to these two. You got it, Rainbow Dash assured her before she sped off to gather the others. Twilight watched her friend leave before turning her eyes to the park bench. Sweetabelle had told her how mean the two school bullies could be while they were looking for them at Silver Spoon's house. She had also been told of how cruel the pair had been to Nyx on her first day. She wanted to scream, but Twilight forced herself to smile gently. As the old saying went, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Excuse me, Twilight said sweetly to Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon as she approached the bench. You two wouldn't happen to know... Diamond Tiara glanced over at Twilight Sparkle, like she was regarding a gnat before she turned back to Silver Spoon, and began to speak as if Twilight wasn't even there. Oh, look, Silver Spoon. It's the town librarian. What, trying to find ponies who have overdue books? No, actually, Twilight said sweetly, though she was struggling to maintain her kind demeanor. I was wondering if you two knew where Nyx was. The last I saw her, she was going with you two to Sugar Cube Corner, and I haven't seen her for a few hours. Wait, she isn't? Silver Spoon tried to ask, only to yelp and promptly fall silent when Diamond Tiara stepped on her hoof. Diamond Tiara looked back at Twilight with a sympathetic grin. Nyx? We don't know any Nyx. Do we, Silver Spoon? Silver Spoon continued to rub her hoof, but shook her head. No, doesn't ring a bell. Twilight chuckled under her breath. It was the kind of chuckle somebody made when they were doing their very best to keep their anger in check. Now, girls, we all know that isn't true. You came to the library earlier to play with my cousin Nyx. You know, she has a black coat and wears a vest. Sounds like a real nerd to me, Diamond Tiara commented,
And we never hang out with ugly nerds, do we, Silver Spoon?
Silver Spoon laughed weakly, withering under Twilight's intense glare.
No, we don't.
Now, girls, Twilight said through grit teeth. I know you. Diamond Tiara leapt down from the park bench and turned her nose up and away from Twilight.
Come on, Silver Spoon. Let's get out of here before she tries to make us read a book or something. Diamond?
Silver Spoon stammered as she pointed a hoof at Twilight. Diamond Tiara turned her head back, confused as to why her friend was suddenly scared. Fear quickly sprang up in her own chest when her eyes fell onto Twilight. While reports of such things were rare, some books had records of exceptionally magically inclined unicorns performing something called a rage shift. Twilight had studied it closely, especially after going through her own rage shift the first time when she was trying to understand Pinkie Pie's sixth sense. The book she had read said that the shift occurs when a unicorn's anger feeds into their magic, causes a physical change to the unicorn's body. And in the moment, Twilight had rage shifted for the second time in her life. With her mane and tail set ablaze by her magic, with her eyes burning red and with her coat a bright, angry white, Twilight glared down at Diamond Tiara like she was a pony of the apocalypse.
Unless you two want me to burn you to cacti, you will tell me where Nyx is right now. She's in every forest.
Silver Spoon squeaked out in fear.
We told her the forest was really nice if you go deeper in and gave her a map. She left from Sugar Cube Corner. That's the last we saw of her.
Twilight's rage shift ended. Her mane, tail, and coat returned to a normal, while her eyes narrowed to pinpoints. Then, without another word from the fillies, Twilight sprung on her hooves and galloped back towards the center of Ponyville, where Rainbow Dash would be gathering her friends. It would be dark soon, and the Everfree Forest only got more dangerous in the dark. Nyx trembled, just barely keeping herself moving without crying. The growing darkness had made the forest very, very scary. She looked around the path anxiously, watching as many long shadows that surrounded her, and seeing things that may or may not have been there. Still, Nyx counted it a small miracle that she could see at all. The moon was 3/4 full, providing just enough light to see the path ahead. Nyx had given up on trying to find a nice place in the forest. Now all she wanted to do was get back to Ponyville, but she'd lost her map. A rustling in the bushes had stalled her earlier, and when she ran, she had left the map behind. Now she was wandering around aimlessly, hoping to recognize some landmark. She tried to follow familiar paths, when she thought she had traversed before. She hadn't crossed the river again, and it was the one landmark Nyx had desperately hoped to see, even if the sea serpent had returned. Following a bend in the path, Nyx came to a stop. Before her, surrounded in curling mist, a creaky rope bridge hung over a deep expanse. It groaned as it shifted gently from side to side, nudged by small breezes. Beyond the bridge on the far side of the gorge were the ruins of an ancient castle that had been long forgotten and partially overtaken by the Everfree Forest. Nyx knew she hadn't passed by a castle on her way to the forest, and yet it was strangely familiar. Curiosity started replacing her fear. Nyx carefully began to step onto the bridge. Thankfully, none of the wooden planks gave way under the weight of her small body, and she was able to cross to the far side without incident. As Nyx approached and looked up at the long-forgotten castle, something began to bubble up in her mind. She tried to force what it was away, to clear her mind, but it was blurry images, and the voice persisted, playing out inside of her head. Oh, my beloved subjects, it's been so long since I've seen your precious little sun-loving faces. What did you do with our princess? Whoa there, Nellie. Why, am I not enough royalty for you? Do you not know who I am? Oh, more guessing games. Holy smokes. How about Queen Mimi? No, Black Snooty. Does my crown no longer count, now that I have been imprisoned for 1,000 years? Did you not recall the legend? Did you not see the signs? I did. I don't know who you are. You're the Mare in the Moon. Nightmare Moon. Well. Some pony who remembers me. Then you also know why I'm here. You're here to remember this day, little ponies, for it will be your last. from this night. The night will last forever. Nick shook her head, finally managing to banish the blurred thoughts from her mind. She had recognized some of the voices. She had heard Twilight. There was also a voice she shouldn't have recognized, but did. The voice of an older mare, one who laughed at the end. It was a voice that Nyx felt she kind of remembered, but she couldn't think of who it belonged to. Putting a strange occurrence out of her mind, she began to climb the steps of the castle. She didn't know why, but she had to see inside. No matter how scary the Everfree Forest was, it was as if the castle was calling out to her. She climbed steps, navigated old hallways, and eventually entered one remaining tower. There was no defining feature in the room, which had suffered under the passage of time, but Nyx recognized that it was the palace's throne room, and it felt like she'd been there before. Nyx stepped to the center of the room, looking up at the broken glass windows at the far end. She winced in pain, images bursting into the front of her mind. These were far more aggressive than the images from before, and they were much clearer. They would not be ignored, and they showed all other thoughts out of her mind as they demanded attention. She realized these were memories, that she could remember standing at the far end of the room, looking down across it. In the memory, she was looking down at a small purple unicorn, a unicorn she knew, Twilight. You little fool! Thinking you could defeat me? Now you will never see your princess, or your son. The light will last forever. Nyx could remember herself saying those words. She could remember thinking them. But even worse, she could remember the feelings of those thoughts. She wanted to hurt Twilight, to push Twilight for trying to thwart her. She was thinking about banishing her, imprisoning her, even torturing her. Nyx struggled against the memory. No, she wouldn't want to hurt Twilight. Twilight was the kindest pony she knew, and it was Twilight who took care of her, who taught her, who read to her to sleep at night. It was Twilight that had found her in the forest. She didn't want to hurt Twilight. Dark shadows shifted around the room. Dispelled magic that had lain dormant was now being awakened by Nyx's presence. Trails of indigo smoke began to creep towards Nyx, and, as the magic seeped into her, the memory continued. She saw Twilight with her friends, saw Twilight give a long speech about elements. Then there was a bright light, a light so bright that it hurt to look at. She had to shield herself from the light with her wing, and then there was a rainbow. But not a nice, pretty rainbow. No, the rainbow lunged at her like an angry snake. It encircled her, and it burned. It was burning her away, tearing her away from something else. It was like a savage animal with razor-sharp claws. It tore her to ribbons, despite her cries. Then the memory faded and stopped, as if the rainbow had caused her to simply not exist anymore. Nyx collapsed to the floor of the castle, panting heavily as the memory finally relented. Despite the cool feel of the castle's stone floor, she could feel the burning pain of the rainbow, how it had cut and torn at her. Other thoughts began to bubble to the surface as more and more of the indigo smoke drew in from the room around in Nyx. The thoughts were desires, hateful desires, desires to hurt ponies and make them pay for ignoring her, memories of being scorned and ignored, memories of jealousy and anguish. Among these thoughts, a few began to stand out and mingle with Nyx's memories of her friends in Twilight. They began to poison those memories, filling them with hatred. She wanted to hurt Twilight. She wanted to make her suffer, to torture her. Those were the thoughts Nyx didn't want to have. She clapped her hooves against the side of her head and shouted at the castle's silence. No, I don't want to hurt Twilight. She takes care of me, teaches me things, lets me go to school. I don't want to hurt her. Despite her cries, the thoughts relentlessly continued. She thought of how she hurt Twilight and how she would torture her. She'd snap off her horn, keep her locked in a dungeon, and other horrible things that started to make Nyx feel physically ill. No, Nyx cried out in the silence. I don't want to hurt Twilight. I don't want to. The thoughts were reaching a boil. As Nyx tried to push them away, more rose in their place. Thoughts of how she'd hurt Twilight's friends, how she'd go after Twilight's family. She just kept thinking about the ways she could break Twilight's spirit. With a final scream, something sparked to life inside Nyx, and her eyes glowed white. The creeping tendrils of indigo smoke suddenly shifted, swirling faster and faster as they sucked down into her like water in a whirlpool. At the same time, the dark desires in her mind began to fade, ebbing away as more and more of the smoky tendrils were absorbed. Then, the last traces of the cloud were gone. Nyx's horn sparked, and sent a crack of lightning lancing up into the sky with a thunderous boom. Celestia bolted upright in her bed, and turned her eyes to the window, through which she could see Ponyville and the Everfree Forest. Her breathing was still, and her eyes turned towards an erect attention. Like a pony hearing an unexplained thump in her home at night, for a moment Celestia had heard something in Equestria that did not belong. She stretched out her magic and senses, trying to find the presence she had detected. It was already gone. It had felt like... No, but that was impossible. She could sense Luna in the castle, in the main hall. Yet Celestia could not get over what she had felt. It was short-lived, but she had sensed her presence. A presence she hoped to never sense again. In another part of Canterlot, a dark blue unicorn with turquoise eyes was sitting in his study when a crack of lightning from the Everfree Forest lit up the room. With the light came a surge of magic, which drew the unicorn's gaze from the book he was reading to the window. He listened to the thunder that trailed, and even after it passed, he continued to stare through his window at the distant Everfree Forest. He then shut the book he had been reading, a rare tome on theatrical resurrection magic, and shouted into the silence of his home, "Proper etiquette!" The door to the study opened within moments, and an all-white unicorn with a fabric collar and tie stepped into the room. He adjusted the monocle over his eye, and looked across the room with his own turquoise eyes. "You called, sir. Have messages sent to Miss Greygale, Miss Nightwind, and Mr. Stonewall? I need to speak with them. This evening, if possible." "Of course, sir. I will have them summoned." Twilight cried out, tripping over her own hooves as she landed in a heap on the side of the path. She and her friends were racing through the Everfree Forest when a bolt of lightning launched into the sky. Twilight had been in the lead, galloping as quickly as her legs would carry her, when she heard the thunder and tripped. Rarity and Fluttershy quickly galloped to assist Twilight, while the others had transfixed skyward, where they had just seen the bolt of magic. "Whoa, did you see that?" Rainbow Dash asked. Applejack nodded and tilted her hat back, so she could have a better view of the sky. "Sure did, Sugar Cube. Where do you reckon it came from?"
"Oh, the Everfree Forest,"
Pinkie Pie chirped.
"Well, no duh, Pinkie Pie,"
Rainbow Dash pointed out. "We're kind of in the Everfree Forest."
"Of course, silly. That's how I knew the lightning bolt came from here."
Dash slapped a hoof to her forehead while Twilight struggled to her hooves with Rarity and Fluttershy's help.
"Twilight, dear, are you okay?"
Rarity asked.
"Yes, I'm fine. I just tripped,"
Twilight assured, pushing her friend away as her horn glowed. The group had stopped just momentarily at the library before heading back into the forest to get a compass and a map. Pinkie Pie had volunteered to carry the map in her curly mane, while the compass hung from Twilight's neck by a thin piece of string. Twilight drew both items out, leaving them in the air as she looked skyward. "Okay," Twilight began after taking a breath to calm herself.
"Where was that bolt of lightning again?" "Right over there,"
Pinkie answered, pointing to the sky with her hooves. Twilight quickly positioned herself by Pinkie Pie, holding up the compass as she looked towards the map in the air.
"Okay, using the mountains as a reference, we're about here. Now, if we're here and the lightning bolt was there, and how long do you say it was between the lightning flash and thunder?"
"A second or two, tops," Rainbow Dash answered. Twilight nodded and, making a very rough calculation in her head, began to move her hoof across the map.
"All right. Then the lightning came from..."
Twilight fell silent, staring at the map. She double-checked her rough measurements and guessed. But, in the pit of her stomach, she knew she was right.
I know where Nyx is,"
Twilight said, dropping the map and compass in the mud.
"I need to get to her right away."
"But, Sugar Cube, how do you..." Applejack began to say, only to be cut off by a bright light enveloping Twilight as she teleported away. Twilight finished her teleportation spell and was waiting for the magic in the air to settle around her before she opened her eyes and looked around. She was in a room she had not been in since the Summer Sun celebration 2 years ago. The throne room in the ancient castle of the Royal Pony Sisters. It was where she and her friends had defeated Nightmare Moon, and the room was just as Twilight remembered it, except for a single small detail. Nyx was lying in the center of the room, and for a moment a wave of relief began to wash over Twilight. That relief, however, receded like a tide from the shore, as was quickly replaced with a powerful, gripping fear that threatened to squeeze the very air from her chest. Nyx's normal mane and tail had been replaced by flowing masses of star-dotted magic. Nyx now was truly Nightmare Moon's doppelganger. All she lacked was the armor, the eyeshadow, and Nightmare Moon's cutie mark. This was Twilight's fears made real. With that mane and tail, could she deny it any longer? Could she honestly believe that the cultist's spell had not accomplished its intended purpose? Nyx was young, but there was no denying she was crying. Nyx's wails filled Twilight's ears, derailing her train of thought. She was bawling her eyes out, and Twilight had to catch herself. She had already taken a few steps forward because of her desire to comfort Nyx, tell her everything was okay. Nyx was terrified, more so than she had been the night Twilight found her. Still, Twilight held herself back as her mind rebelled against itself. If she couldn't dismiss Nyx's resemblance to Nightmare Moon, especially now that Nyx had the mane and tail and Moon the mare was famous for, yet Nightmare Moon, would she be crying like that? Would she be wailing so loudly? Unable to bear it anymore, Twilight inched towards Nyx. She finally approached the filly as she would a slumbering Ursa Major, as if the sobbing form could turn on her at any moment and maul her to death at any second. Twilight pushed forward, and when she was close enough, she reached out at Nyx and nudged her with a hoof. Nyx spun her head around at the touch, a frightened look in her eyes. That fear, however, died almost immediately when she saw Twilight. She scrambled to her hooves and buried her head in Twilight's chest, bawling, "I'm sorry." "Shh, it's okay. It's okay," Twilight reassured, cautiously wrapping her hooves around Nyx's trembling form. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me. Please. I don't want to hurt you." Nyx wailed into Twilight's chest, her voice muffled. Twilight's heart skipped a beat as she fought the urge to pull away. "Hurt me? When did you want to? I don't know." Nyx sobbed miserably. I came in here and then I remembered looking down on you. We were both here, and you looked so scared. And I was happy to see you scared, and I wanted to hurt you, because you tried to stop me from doing something. But I don't want to hurt you, Twilight. Please. Please don't hate me. I don't want to hurt you." Twilight felt a tension in her chest, a physical manifestation of her inner conflict. Nyx wasn't crying because she was scared of the castle or the forest. She was crying because she felt she had done something horrible, and she was apologizing for it. Apologizing for things Nightmare Moon had done, had thought, had felt. It worried Twilight because if Nyx had Nightmare Moon's memories, there was almost conclusive evidence that the two were one and the same. Yet as Twilight looked at the filly, craning and crying into her neck, she was no longer able to see Nightmare Moon, and it made her realize just how close she had grown to Nyx. She had only taken Nyx into her home originally to keep an eye on her, to make sure she knew where the possible reincarnation of Nightmare Moon was at all times. That was it. She was never supposed to bond with Nyx. She had intended only to be a caretaker, an observer, but things had changed so quickly. She needed to find a way to get Nyx to sleep at night, so she started reading her bedtime stories. She saw Nyx struggling with homework, so she sat down and helped her. Nyx came to her asking questions, and, through their conversations, Twilight had grown to know Nyx as a filly. She was a filly who loved the sun, had friends, and was curious about the world around her. That familiarity had bred care. Twilight cared about Nyx. She wanted her to have a good night's sleep, and to do well in school, to ask questions. She wanted Nyx to be safe. Twilight still wasn't sure who Nyx was, or how much, if anything, she shared in common with Nightmare Moon beyond the physical similarities. She did, however, know one thing. Nyx was crying in terror at her own mistakes, her memories, and Twilight couldn't ignore Nyx's wails.
I know you don't,
Twilight said, comfortingly, hooking a leg around Nyx and hugging the filly as tightly as she could.
It's okay. I know you don't want to hurt me.
Twilight's words, however, were not enough to soothe Nyx. She continued to cry and beg for forgiveness, and again, Twilight would say it was okay. She didn't try to force Nyx to stop, even after her mane and tail had returned to normal. Nyx needed to cry, to get it all out. She had remembered something terrible, something she couldn't understand, and she just needed Twilight to be there, to reassure her everything was okay, to protect her